So he came on the show, and what he did is in the 70s, he grew up in New Mexico and always wanted to live in the woods. Okay. Like, just grew up camping in the mountains and stuff. And in the 70s, he goes up to Alaska and just goes to live in the bush along the Yukon. And then did it. I mean, for 15 years. For 15 years, he lived in the bush in Alaska. And the unit was created to be standalone. It needs nothing. It wasn't created to do long-term warfare, but it was created to be standalone. The Navy was created to do a waterside terrorism, but they were never created to stand alone because we already had a primary hostage rescue unit that could be another force. What we need is very specific stuff, and this is how the charter actually started and was written. And that's the logic behind where the charter was at the time. The SEALs cannot deploy without JSOC. The unit can. The unit needs no one to deploy, and they have all their own people. The SEALs have to depend on augmentees to run their support out of JSOC. So having said that, the SEALs could never be an equivalent to the unit because they weren't created to do any of that and still are not. And the unit was created to be standalone. It needs nothing. It wasn't created to do long-term warfare, but it was created to be standalone. The Navy was created to do a waterside terrorism, but they were never created to stand alone because we already had a primary hostage rescue unit that could be another force. What we need is very specific stuff, and this is how the charter actually started and was written. And that's the logic behind where the charter was at the time. The SEALs cannot deploy without JSOC. The unit can. The unit needs you show up in country, you show up.
Need to run Windows on your Mac? Parallels Desktop makes it simple to integrate Windows apps into your macOS workflow.
Selection, obviously, from the context, is very physically taxing on the body. I know a lot of unit guys keep those cards close to the chest when it comes to selection because it is a sacred thing. But so I would say the things that are more widely covered and that people already know about, it's a lot of land navigation in the mountains of West Virginia. There's a lot of rucking, and we're talking at breakfast. I think you have a funny story about the 40-miler at the end that you hadn't shared.
I do. That's true. I don't like talking about selection a lot. You know, I think it's something that's sacred and should be a surprise to anyone that's lucky enough to get to experience that amazing school, amazing course, amazing process. The 40-miler is a wide known basic goal that everyone, you may not know what's between the day you show up and the end, or between the day you show up and the end, but everyone knows the end is some sort of 40-mile process. You know, and you're counting down the days, and hopefully you're lucky enough to be on that 40 miler. So I will talk about the 40 miler to an extent. There's several secrets within the 40 milers. Future candidates would love to know, but won't hear it today. But my 40 miler. So I get my map, and I get my coordinates, and I get told, hey, you know, go, this is where you're going. Do you have any questions? Just leave it at that. I said, no, Sergeant Major. He goes, free to leave. So part of me knows it's a 40-mile day. I might have to leave a little something in the reserve. Another part of me is like, it's the last thing I gotta do. Like, I'm just gonna red line this thing for 40 miles. No standards. I have no idea how long I have, how short, nothing. So I can't help my excitement, and I'm jogging. And I have a personal rule that I have, that I never jog uphill. I walk as fast as I can, and I jog the downhills. I think it's counterproductive to, run uphill, and then be tired and try to recover downhill. So it was a slight uphill incline, but I was so excited I'm jogging. And I had my red light on my head for just a little bit as I'm looking at my map. And I have my little dummy gun. I have my 70 whatever pound rucksack on my back. And I'm looking and I'm running. I'm looking and I'm running. I'm looking and I'm running. And I trip. I don't know what I stubbed my toe on, but I tripped and I garage sail it. I'm not just like a couple like stuttering steps and fall on my knee. I immediately put out my hands and swan dive into this dirt road. My rucksack comes up and hits me in the back of the head. I'm pancaked on it, and I'm 90 seconds into my 40 miler. I immediately get up and I look back to see if the sergeant major can see me, because I feel like I'm within earshot. Look, it's really low light. He probably heard me do a massive umph and as I hit the ground, but I couldn't see him. He couldn't see me. And so I think I've saved myself the embarrassment. And I remember going, oh, gosh, what a way to start this out. Like, I'm hurt. Like, it was a hell of a fall. Like, well, yeah, why? Well, got that out of the way. Smooth sailing from here. And I start running. And now I got to make up time, because now, I feel like, because I was on the ground for 10 seconds. But, brush myself off and I go. I'm down the road 30 or 45 seconds later when I realize, wait a minute, where's my map? My map was in my hand when I tripped, and I don't know where my map is now. It's not my hand, it's not my pocket. Where is my map? And I have this absolute gut-wrenching feeling that I've lost. I can't do 40 miles without a map. I'm not, so, and I definitely don't want to go all the way back to the sergeant major and say, hey, this is embarrassing. And the first 90 seconds of my final event, I lost my map. So I go back and I'm looking for the massive imprint in the ground that was my body just a minute ago. And ironically enough, it was pretty easy to find out where I fell before that. And I'm looking everywhere, and there's no map to be found. And my heart, and I'm just, time's a ticking, I'm screwing this up. I look to the side of this dirt road. Now, as I'm going the right way, not that I'm going back the wrong way now, but as I was going the correct way moving forward, there's a massive amount of incline to my right on this dirt road. Of course, the level off the dirt road, and a deep depression of a black abyss to my left. I don't see my map anywhere. This is clearly where I fell. This is clearly the last time I remember seeing my map. And now I have another heart-sinking feeling of, did I possibly throw my map down this ravine as I fell? And I look over the edge, and there in the cliff of this ridge is my map, barely hanging by a string on the root sticking out of this thing. probably 15 feet down. And I'm like, I can either go back to the sergeant major and ask for a new map and ask for forgiveness. Not even it. Or I got to go down there and get this map. So I take off my rucksack and I start scaling down, holding on to roots on the side of this rock cliff. It sounds a little dramatic, but that's what it was. I get it. I put it in my map. I start climbing up and I'm breaking roots with my weight on the way up, and I can't get back up. And so I shimmy to the left and I try to grab these roots or these small trees to get back up, and I'm breaking them and I'm breaking them. And I keep on moving over and over and over. And I'm about on my last option before I have no other options. And I finally have one that sticks long enough in the side as I pull myself up this cliff to get back on the road. I get my rucksack on finally. Now I have my map, and now I can start my 40. And I can't think of a more dramatic and crappy way to start off your 40 in the history of the Delta Force than I started out the 40 miler.
That's a great story.
Amazing that I made it with that type of introduction to the 40 miler. You would think I was a clumsy ditz that wasn't going to do well after that. Thankfully, almost at a time. For the next however long it took me, I absolutely crushed it. Never missed a point, never slowed down, never made a mistake again after that. And I'll say this, I have no problems making mistakes. Clearly, I've made a lot of mistakes, and that wouldn't be the last mistake I made. And I've never prided myself in being a person that cannot make mistakes, but I've prided myself in a person that doesn't make the same mistake twice. I can get pretty creative with my first mistake, but I won't make the same mistake twice. I think that's something that I would love to, knowledge that and a characteristic trait that I'd love to push down to my son and the next generation.
So on that 40 miler, is it more physical or mental?
And we're back in third quarter planning. Adams is quarterbacking this project, and she is looking pretty tired, Jill.
She's stuck, Bill, and that deadline is looming.
It looms for us all, Jill.
Wait a minute. She just pulled up Grammarly.
Grammarly is an AI writing partner that helps you make your point.
She just asked Grammarly to help her write a summary of her doc, and she's shortening it. Look at that. She's done. And it's in!
It's in! It's a touchdown!
Download Grammarly for free.
That's both. You can't, in a weird way, you can't out physical it. You can't out mental it either. Like I know it sounds like an answer. It's not an answer, but it is both. It is both. It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like you do it fresh.
Yeah.
You're doing it at the end of selection. Like you've been losing weight and you've been gathering injuries, this whole time. Like, you very well may started out with a limp. It's not ideal, but with that type of carrot dangled in front of you, it's the last thing you gotta do. You'll get it.
So the only other thing about selection I'll ask you about is the other part of it, which is I guess it would be like a board at the end, the commander's board, where they try to rattle you. You get in front of the big boss and big table full of people, and you're standing there in the spotlight.
It's a tough job interview. It's a tough job interview for a tough job. That's what it should be. And I hope someone here gets to experience it. If they do, find me and write me. I'd love to hear your experience first, and I'll tell you about mine. very personable stuff. What is really cool about that community and that very small community is the shared experiences. And so
You show up in country, your first deployment with the agency. What's your first impression?
The best dudes I've ever met have been in that job. They're the best shooters in the world. Even better than my standards in special operations.
Yeah.
I mean, I've shot with the best shooters in the world in special operations, and I get to this job, and I was super impressed by the standards. The shooting qual is the hardest shooting qual in the government.
So you separate from the Army, finish your degree. How long do you go from your last day in the military to CIA?
So, the contracting side,
Mm-hmm.
6 months.
That's
maybe
it?
more.
6 months?
Yeah, 6 months.
Did you even want to give being a civilian a shot, or you just couldn't wait to get back over? Or
Well, my anticipation at that time was I only wanted to do one other job, and that was to be a paramilitary operations officer for the CIA.
Okay.
That's it. The first casualty of the war, the global war on terror, was Michael Spann, and he was a former Marine officer and a member of that job and position. So I wanted to do that. I was ready to hang up my life, meaning my personal life and everything else, to just stay at war,
Yeah.
because that's what I wanted. And I was chasing the rainbow.
A lot of guys, I mean,
Yeah, I was there in Libya, seeing those dudes operate, and was like, you know what, man, I want to be part of that. These guys are squared away. They don't seem to be dealing with a whole bunch of bullshit, and that's what I'm going to do. If I can't kill bad guys in special operations, then I'll get out and kill bad guys somewhere else. And that was what my thoughts were at the time.
it's funny how that mindset just goes across the board, because
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I wanted to go. And not a whole lot of people actually know that about you. I'm really in tune with your following on Instagram. I'm really in tune with your YouTube and your 8 social media channels that you have under Fieldcraft plus your personal, and you never fucking bring that up. Not a whole lot of people know that you jumped over to CIA, and then which is where we met.
Yeah.
So, and I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. What was your first impression? I mean, you go through training, let's breeze through that, but you show up in country, your first deployment with the agency. What's your first impression?
So the reason I did that job is they gave me that job as an interim from my staff position, which would have been paramilitary operations guy. So I did that job thinking it was a temporary thing, thinking it was only going to be a rotation or 2 until I got the call. When I showed up, I realized really fast that all the things that I thought about those positions and then the pot of gold at the end of that rainbow didn't exist. And they were dealing with shit just as much as I was. And so I started realizing that the job I was in wasn't that bad. In fact, it was pretty decent. I mean, without getting into too many details, there was an operational relevancy to it, which made me feel good about what I did for a living. Good pay, good experiences, and not a lot of bullshit. I mean, you kind of change your scale of bullshit when you go there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just came off active duty where I dealt with a lot of bullshit, so it wasn't that bad. And so for the first time, I think I was pretty happy with what I was doing. The operation ops tempo was decent, and the rotation schedule was good.
Were you at a flagpole?
I wasn't.
Oh, you went, okay.
I went straight to Yemen.
Okay,
Yeah,
where we met.
where we met. Yeah.
So that was your first deployment.
Yeah.
So what was your impression of the guys, of me? What was your impression of me?
You know what's crazy is people ask me that. Obviously, a lot of special operations guys ask me that. The best dudes I've ever met have been in that job. Because I know, because of the vetting process, that they're the best shooters in the world. Even better than my standards in special operations.
Yeah.
I mean, I've shot with the best shooters in the world in special operations, and then I get to this job, and I was super impressed by the standards. The shooting qual is the hardest shooting qual in the government. There's no doubt about it, because I've been to the firearms instructor development course at Camp Perry to vet the hardest and most difficult courses. Outside of the U.S. Marshal, outside of the U.S. Marshal Service, the Air Marshal Service, it is the most difficult qual. So having that confidence that these guys are vetted, qualified to be where they're at, and that the myriad of backgrounds and experiences are brought together, I thought it was real cool, man.
Yeah.
I was super impressed. You're always going to have a dude here and there, but for the direct hires that I operated with, the independent contractors, there's nothing bad I could say about any of them. You know, some of them are quirky and weird, just like we all are.
Yeah.
But operations wise, the best I've ever worked with.
Well, that's cool to hear. Did you find it, one of the biggest struggles that I had working there was the integration of tactics, because you're working with all the best units from all special operations. Everybody has their way of doing shit. Everybody thinks their way is the best. Some guys, like myself, can shut the fuck up and learn new ways and realize, hey, you know, this is what we have to do, and we have to be uniform if we're gonna work together. And then there's, you know, the other crowd that they can't let go of, you know, their specific or their unit specific tactics. Where did you fall in that spectrum?
I try to strike a good balance. I did have recent GWAT experience in tactics, and you know how that is. The further displaced you get from the war, there's a whole bunch of different tactics that change. So I was heard, you know, when I brought up things, but I also try to be very careful about, one, being a new guy, but two, understanding that as long as the tactics worked, there could be a different way to skin the cat. I mean, there were things that I didn't necessarily agree with, but there are going to be different viewpoints and tactics. But if it works and doesn't violate security, I'm okay with that. So I had a better, easier time, and like I said, I needed that job.
Yeah.
I was transitioning, you know, obviously off the active duty. I needed that job, and I needed to be in a good place in that position. I had just made Sergeant Major in 19th Special Forces Group. So going back home, I had responsibilities. And so I just couldn't get caught up in any bullshit. There was drama like there is anywhere else. I just go to my room.
Yeah, you were a room hobbit.
Yeah, stay in my room.
You did a lot of squats that trip.
Yeah.
I literally saw your butt rising.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Week after week.
2 to 4 hours of squats a day. I had a nice ass after.
You
after
did.
that.
That was real nice one.
Man,
But
so nice.
I mean, that's cool though, because I mean, honestly, most guys in that outfit don't have near the fucking experience that you brought to the table. I mean, we just in an hour went over your, you know, breezed through your military career, and I mean, holy shit, dude, that's a lot of fucking trigger time. That's a lot of deployments.